signs and stuff like that, and so that you'll know, because it all has to do with the moon and the sun. And that wasn't the only. That's not the only sun. It's not the only moon. However, the how they operates at Midgard is that it governs the flow of the water. So you'll see one face of it, and it operates on 13 and on 9. And so you'll see, as women and all other feminine principle that's manifest in the physical produces, it will be governed by the moon calendar. That's why when you look at African culture, you got to look at it from a bicameral perspective, so that a lot of the confusion that exists now would not exist. See, so when the hybrids teach the history, they will teach the history only by the sun calendar, when they know that it's bicameral. And then you will see in the Picts in say in Phoenicia, you'll see them the ancient Moorish Picts. They will use a symbol of the eagle, the double-headed eagle, with its head pointed two different ways, opposite 190.
Is that like the two birds?
That's why they use that with 33 degrees.
And the two-party system?
Yes. But it's two chambers of the brain. It's the two chambers of the brain, to the chambers of heaven. And so when the connection of all of the sites are in place, because you got to remember, when they ruled, everything was basically done on 7. So even the governmental provinces were generally 7. So they would have, like, say, for instance, if you had a nation state, it would be divided into 7 provinces or 7 territories. That's true.
Someone asked if the 7 sisters were also indicative of the 7 continents.
Well, they would say that, although there's not in that sense. Because the reality, we would say North America and South America, but North America and South America is one continent, in truth.
But you were, can I? Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to interject earlier when you were talking about some of the things that are in the pipeline to be revealed, that have existed, for a long period of time, that have been hidden from humanity or the masses. We always call the masses, like, say, the 99%. So in terms of what we've been listening to with regard to, say, the med beds and things like that, things that regenerate limbs, things that regenerate minds and take away.
Now you're going back to Genesis.
Right.
See, so Genesis, again, is not even what people think it is. No. Even the view, because the book has been majorly altered. The interesting thing is, even though they altered the books, because that book is contemporary to us, truthfully, to be honest with you. But even with the modification, they really couldn't hide everything. That's why it's been necessary for them to keep wars going on, putting nations against nations, and then they themselves would take the place as Vicar, which is also why the hybrids refer to themselves as Vicar.
Right.
And so write that down, you all. Vicar. V-I-C-A-R.
Vicar.
Yeah.
Vicar of Christ.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is that even with, the technology that perhaps that I have, which we're not allowed to say what it can do. We can't, what they have. They have it so that can't say that it can't. It doesn't diagnose. It doesn't.
The hybrids have it that you can't.
Right. We can't.
All right. Now let's get.
I'm just.
Yeah. No, I'm making that point because. Right. While you're saying what you're saying, because I want you to say what you're saying.
Because we're told that we can't, because the people
who is. I was just naming who the who is.
I don't want to put the alphabet, it starts with F and ends with A.
Yeah.
So they don't allow certain things to be advertised, just like you can't say certain herbs or whatever would heal.
Because they are attacking Midgard.
Right.
Now that is part of.
Go ahead. I got a point.
Go ahead.
Make a point.
No, I just wanted to say that's part of the Christ.
How he is, right?
That's the Antichrist.
He already knows my thoughts. At least he thinks he did. the point I wanted to make with that technology in something that I shared with you was a case in point of what's possible.
Oh yeah. Yes.
My father.
Share it. You should share it.
Yeah. My father, who was given a diagnosis of you were doing a class August 15th when we got to put him in the hospice situation.
Yes.
And has been is still with us, and the technology that I have, and I put it up here and I posted and I run it through. You saw a picture of my dad.
Yes.
On that Friday. On Friday. Whatever Friday was. And I was able to get in and
look like a state of transition.
Right. I was able to get in, scan him with this technology, and then come home and begin to send out these energetic, whatever I can't say they are, send him these things. When I went yesterday, which was
singing happy birthday to you.
89th solar return.
Singing happy birthday all the way through.
His own happy birthday. Yeah. And they're telling me in the last 5 or 6 days, his condition had just markedly improved. And I say to the woman, well, this is what I've been doing since Friday. And took a picture, and it looks like night and day.
Yeah. Like really.
And then
absolutely.
Some of you saw the post, but if you saw what he looked like 6 days prior,
please,
you would have said
he looked like he was transiting.
Yes. So what I'm saying is this type of technology and all this stuff does exist, and they kept these things from us. Instead, they would like to ply us with poisons that are called medicines. Pharmaceutical is pharmacy. It's like the word in witchcraft.
Word virus means poison.
Yeah, but
it does.
Yeah. So I'm saying there's things that exist that people don't even have to go through, but yet we
never did have to go through.
Yeah, we don't have to go through because the ability to do certain things has always been there.
Now let's look at this. We look at these problems at Midgard. And what we do, you notice that when we speak about what the priesthood has been doing and is doing, we always come from a position of apologizing to tell the truth. And then modifying while we're attempting to imply or signify the truth.
Right.
There's a part of the Antichrist operations. However, the point that I'm saying is when and because I really didn't want to interrupt you, I just want to make a point that when we start mentioning that when we keep saying you got to start naming who. From a metaphysical point of view, when we want to solve these problems, we got to stop being vague. We can be vague by virtue of protecting some while the dark priesthood is still in power. And while they're still willing to and able to cause havoc at Midgard, we want to just pretty much put it this way. We know that when we're talking about we're talking about the heterogeneous hybrids, but not all of them. It's just that the dark priesthood that had been doing the damage to Midgard have chosen that bed of physicality as their coven, one of their covens. That's all. And so he hides among them.
It just makes me it just makes me frustrated and angry when I hear about people becoming, incapacitated, debilitated,
And you think it's something in nature, and it really isn't when you find out that none of this stuff is natural.
Get rid of the people,
Because no, genocide them out. See, get rid of is mild. It's like kind of like, he unjustly took my stuff. No, he robbed me. How about that? You know what I mean? Much even as we talk about the issues of jurisdiction, while we're approaching some of these things that we're talking about, we're really trying to help the people to be courageous enough to start rejecting that which is false. Because the one of the problems that we have, and I understand, the people's hesitation, because because Rome has presented themselves and backed it up that they are vicar. And this is why our people are fearful, because Romans do what Romans do.
Yeah.
You know, and this is back to the issue: are the people willing to admit to themselves, you know, that the problems on the planet is that Rome has claimed godship and lordship, and they have been doing these things to humanity and to Midgard, and we have sat back and made excuses for them, and then also keep making excuses rather than admit what we can actually insight see. And then we keep covering up our pineal, keep covering up our pineal, and then charging everyone else with calling the seeing of our pineal evil, meaning that you're not supposed to see what's going on. So you cover up your pineal gland, etc., which is really, you know, the blending of all your seven sights. You know, and so this is again where it's important to recognize the administration over and maintenance of hell on earth has much to do with suppressing the thought, suppressing the activation of the pineal gland, misrepresenting the disciplines of ancient Hikupta and going beyond that, contaminating every discipline, so that when the people begin to become aware of the disciplines, they would call all the disciplines evil rather than recognize that the hybrids have actually what? Used them as fronts. The same way they would use, as an example, one of the most common sources for to feed the vampires among the hybrids has openly and is known around the world been what they call the Red Cross.
Yeah.
Under the guise of helping people with blood transfusions and stuff like that. And they was really making some what you would call an elixir that they do the ritual with. You know, here's the body of Christ and here's the blood, and the people look at the ritual and don't know that these people are heterogeneous hybrids, and that's just a ritual of what they've been doing for centuries. Not knowing that they really are vampires, like for real, for real, for real. You know, and so again, even when they put them in the movies, you know, after a while, people look at the movies, and so the people look at these things as just symbolisms or rituals, and actual, and not really comprehending that they're representative of realities of what has been going on for centuries. However, because the platforms of the Piscean era are falling apart, these things need to be discussed more openly so that the people can how do you say come to some resolve of coming together, learning to love instead of hate, and start using their intelligence to actually formulate and reconstruct legitimate, equitable, moral, and ethical platforms of governmental operations for Midgard, because we have a lot of work to do for cleanup. Meanwhile, while that's going on, as the energies of the Piscean priesthood, which would include almost every one of these institutional platforms that we have looked for guidance from to prepare ourselves for the civilized world, has actually been anti-civilization and anti-Christ, which is really the source, the major source of your problems at Midgard. And it is so pervasive that just to speak on it lightly really doesn't give the subject matter justice. And so I would always signify on certain things and try to get people to look at certain legal phrases and words and certain terms that have been used so that people can be willing to think for themselves. Because it's also, whereas as this stuff, Antichrist stuff comes out, a lot of people mentally may not be able to handle it. And that's another reason why we're talking openly.
We've talked about that. The people are so indoctrinated into or by the lies and the deceptions and the cover-ups that when the truth comes, you know how they say you can't handle the truth?
Meaning they're not willing to handle the truth. But yes, go ahead.
Some people have
you don't want to know the truth.
Some people have so much vested in the lie, in the deception, that when the truth comes, not only is it a mental upset, but they have like I said, they have invested in the lie. Vested and invested. And they're not going to like what happens when there's a reversal, if you will, of things. When things come to light, and you cannot use people and have the advantage over people like you've had over the past couple hundred years.
Yes. Now, and this is this is the area where part of the area where we're dealing with right now is the people have been trained, and this is a false premise, to keep looking for these gods outside of themselves. They've been trained to trust the institutions that were in place to so-called serve mankind. So they're this mentality that they have interest in it. They don't know that they were the turkey that was being served. Truthfully. Now, another part of the problem that the priesthood have, even some of your lower ghouls, on a lower level that are dealing with things like council people, mayors, and things like that, governors, people in lower hierarchy level, they don't want the people to find out because they know that the people will come directly for them. Like for real. However, the other problem that exists, and this is the discomforting and the gray area, is that the people have been so damaged by these institutions of guilt, fear, and superstition that they're overlooking the fact that they're actually collapsing. It's sort of like they're so used to the kind of like the symbolic, because there's two ways you look at the dragon. They'll say the reptile or the dragon. It's a conquering thing. It's activation thing. It's not altogether negative. It's also experience. Is that they're so used to the hybrids doing so much damage that they fear to resist or to reject the hybrid, because the hybrid always does damage. And my projection with this is that if they would chill out, lean back, pay attention, they would recognize that you have a situation here, whereas the hybrid system is mortally wounded, and it's in a position that either you go or they go. That's where we are, kind of like. And if the people aren't willing to put up a fight, meaning that they're really not willing to stand for the truth, they will be sacrificed. And it will be because they've agreed to it. However, I don't think many of the people see that we're at that point. How like they're so used to say seeing certain things in this order, not knowing that they were controlled things, and that because the idol god systems have never had any competition, pardon me, they've been able to thrive without what you would say rejection, and been able to achieve their means because no one would stand up because they feared that they would be defeated. However, the wisdom is to see that they're really collapsing for real and not just from the manipulations.
And people need to get used to the fact that much of what they become accustomed to doing, having, seeing is gone and never coming back.
Exactly. The platforms and the system, you know, see, because this is what you got to look at. You know, like the same way that people are looking at electric vehicles being introduced in their minds, they're looking at electric. It is so, it is so juvenile because electric vehicles is like low level technology that was operating 1,000 years ago.
Listen, some of the ancient art that you've looked at, some we've looked at, and what they were doing, they would show the bottom half of the, say, the bottom or 2/3 of the painting in pictures. When they now started revealing things, you'll see the light of God is shining down on the people as they walk, and then you see in the full picture that these are flying ships that were like spaceships that actually people
Ramanas,
Ramanas,
yes.
fire, these vehicles, the airships that were way back
now
then.
You're going now. So now when you're talking about Yahweh, right? Because you're talking about that. Now you're talking about the elements of the earth, air, fire, and water. Now you're talking about what? The chemical tables, the metal tables, the physical tables, the crystal tables. That's the jewel. That's the Jew. It's sort of like the idol gods images that have been so successful in ruling over humanity are collapsing and they're uncomfortable about it on both sides. Those who were ruled and those who have been misruled. Because you got to see as this stuff, as this the real human experience starts coming out, the things that have controlled us mentally with the psychic attacks, including our misconceptions of gods, let us make man, just even that simple, you know, opens up to a whole new realm of other comprehension and information that demonstrates that our concepts have been part of our prison. So we looking at it's sort of like someone being caged in and they come to the gate that's locked and they look at the gate as quote unquote the way type thing when the gate is only part of the constriction, part of the mechanism, and it's far beyond that you really need to seek that you didn't know to seek. And this is again why we're talking about the excatures. So you all, when some of you will receive checks in the coming weeks from the platform of the Praters, still trying to save the systems of Pisces while it's being dismantled, and it's being dismantled. So people are still looking at the mundane level of the battle of the political platforms when what I'm saying to you is that is really juvenile and it goes far beyond that. So but look at it for those who aren't willing to look further, but know that what you're seeing is a dance for you. It's a dance for you to keep you busy on one hand, but it's also a dance for you to prepare to open up. And that's the truth. And so what we want to seek among ourselves are those who are open enough mentally and spiritual enough relative to morals and ethical principles that are just in nature. You don't need no mystical teaching for this to reactivate social political platforms um, in honor and with integrity to help humanity go through this crisp period, ascension period. That's true.
We have questions. I have a question here. Let me see. Where'd it go? This is from Justin Garris. It says, where or how does the philosopher's stone come into play regarding the activation of all our glands? Are all of its touted capabilities true, or is it another allegory?
It's everything. Almost all these things these monuments and things that we create are simply our relationship to things, but are reminders. Not unlike, like, say, when remember how we looking at Shakamoxon territory or Philadelphia territory, and they were talking about
The
old
underground.
forts,
Yeah.
and they're looking at underground, and you see after all these couple centuries, the wood is dry, and you see people's basements damp with all these structures, but yet you see these bricks, arch bricks, and you see underground tunnels, and they're just as dry as they were from when they were built. That some of the doors could be used right now, and they're not having deteriorated.
Mm-hmm.
So the deal of it is to understand that the assumptions that people have that we've advanced, distinguished from, and opposed to actually being stagnated. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
That in itself, the realization of people having to accept that is sort of like a mental shock, but it is already in the workings, which is again why we're having this conversation. However, what I think that we need to view is that we have a responsibility to ourselves to go through the exercise of learning and comprehending some basic principles, etc., so that we are more capable and competent in exercising what our people have been constantly talking about, self-determination, and in another word, you might say self-government. And so, but recognizing again, as we've been telling people for years, a lot of things that we're doing now will not be doing later, but it's by necessity of development and not a necessity of permanence of institutional operations. So some of the things we're doing now is only to kind of get us caught up, and you might say caught up, but into the, in other words, we're getting into the race, put it that way, so that from among us, there can be competent beings who can be taken or ascended to a little bit more level so that we can, because the real missionary work right now is cleaning up Midgard and its inhabitants, and that's the real truth. And I think that's a simple way of keeping it simple, not making it complex.
Mm-hmm.
Because the spooky games of dogmatism, not only didn't work, they don't work, and they will not be institutions in that nature in the present, past, future.
Seems like they might be getting some interference with some of it, like they might be blocking some. But that's a good point of segue to at least let them know that we will be doing some Zoom private
Mm-hmm.
Zoom classes, and we will be announcing that. And
Yeah,
hopefully we'll be
because you can't, you really can't be, you can't be open, not because you can't be open. It's just that they'll block it so that people don't get it, because they're battling to keep their power.
absolutely, absolutely. So I'm trying to see if there are any more
They're
questions.
battling to keep their power, even though, and it's so you have a kind of like those are also multifaceted. You have this, like, this duality that they're looking at on the even surface of the people becoming awakened or reawakening. And we say reawakening because people, you know, what they think is new, you know, discovering that stuff ain't new. It's not really.
Somebody asked this. I guess this is like from the last question. Somebody else that says the Rosetta Stone is different then.
You know, the Rosetta. When you look at the Rosetta Stone, let's look at, say, the Napoleonic Wars, and when they got the Rosetta Stone, that was one of the keys or part of the informational keys to what they would refer to as letting the genie out of the bottle. What you would kind of refer to as a lot of the metaphysical nature character of ancient Hikupta, ancient Amexem. And see, because I think when people are looking at alchemy, they're usually projected to look at, or encouraged to look at, you know, taking base metals and producing gold, you know, with the metal chart, you know, and from that perspective, and not look at the alchemy inclusive of the biological zoology or zodiacus aspect also in the alchemy. And so this is where a lot of the hybrid Europeans have been reverse engineering and also taking your zodiacus knowledge and Gnostic knowledge and applying what we call in these days the dark magic, or yes. And it's not unlike trying to get people to be reasonable and recognize, just because water, you can drown in water, recognize that water is also your life. And coming to a comprehension of the use of the laws of nature, the use of the elements of nature, and not the misuse of the elements of nature. And the alchemical science of both social engineering or social organization, etc., is the area that most people would look at when they look at the Rosetta Stone. But you've got to look at the problems that we've had with the hybrids, is that they've always taken everything that they've generally learned from ancient Babylonia and made it dark. That's really what our problem is. That's really a great part of our problem. So and so we have this real refiner soap problem where we have to learn to separate the wheat from the chaff type thing. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So therefore we have to go to the depths of our intelligence so that we can make discernment. And we clearly cannot depend on the hybrids for guidance. Although by virtue of them battling to stay in power, they will reveal certain things if you have the eyes to see it. Hmm. So, you know, when you're looking at and so this is why it's important, even though it's very mundane in a sense, for people to shed their whole concepts of what they thought hell was, and understand all of their problems been coming from these people that they thought was government, that the people that they called their government was actually a coven of dark priests. And that's a fact. However, the elements and the symbolisms that were often used are not necessarily negative. They were just simply misrepresented and made negative. And you can look at it even harmonic with the very problem, like where African people are also referred to as people of the sun, where we're harmonic with the sun, and you find that some hybrids are absolutely the opposite. And so you can kind of comprehend in the nature of things how some paleoliths, where you love the sun, they hate the sun. Just the circumstance of the biology. And when you see the cultivation around those things, you don't justify, but you can understand the mentality, distinctions. And this is another reason why a lot of our people sometimes don't understand the reasoning of the heterogeneous hybrid in their dealings with humanity and the sun. How come they put poison in the air? How come they're trying to block the sun? Duh. Sun trying to kill them? Duh. I mean, not that's not a defense, but you have to kind of understand they have a different outlook. Many of them in the atmosphere of Midgard. Why? Because the hybrid it is not a original hybrid, heterogeneous hybrid specifically, an Ingla man or Paleolith or troglodyte nigger is a mixing of by scientific method, not by some other accidental circumstance necessarily, of two different species to create another species. And so you have what you call a species of humanity in purgatory, an alchemical or alchemy purgatory. And you will call that species Roman. And this will be talked about in the Genesis, where the red, ruddy, hairy one, because red, ruddy, that's what Roman means. Roman means red, ruddy. So the red man is really the Paleolith. That's why you see them start calling the Bantu Moors tribes and Naga tribes of North America, red man type thing. No, the red man is the Paleolith. It's not a negative. It's just you got to really know the origin of a lot of these sociological terms that we assume to be one thing. They're not necessarily what you thought they were. And it's not to be misused. It's to be looked at, comprehended, overstood, understood, understood, so we can start, trying to bring some harmony back here. This is again why the treaties were put in place. We're trying to, stop all this confusion. But in the process, you can't hide the truth and fix things. You can't fix things with a lie. Just the truth.
Waiting for more questions.
Hmm?
I'm looking at more comments than questions. Let me say. There was one person said they had received 3 checks, but they hadn't cashed any of them. 3 of the, I guess, the checks from the
Who's that?
stimulus.
Oh yeah.
I remember seeing it.
Well, I'm telling you, they're coming from the executor's chamber, and that. As a matter of fact, that's where you get the word check from executor. So even in the everyday operations that people have assumed to be one thing, it isn't what you think it is. And for those, if you want to look in ancient Iberia, um, and look at the structure of government, that has much to do with what you're dealing with now, of how they contaminate. Say, right now you see democracies, and you see um, monarchy, etc. So look at heptarchy. So when you look at heptarchy, you're looking more of original structures, what we talked about, where your provinces were broken up into your different tribal and nation systems of 7 parts in harmony with Saba culture or Sabian Moorish culture. Because so much of everything dealing on 7 in the cycles of life was always constructed into our social structure. That's why 7 has always been so important, numerically within Asiatic African culture.
Now, when you look up the definition of that, it says it's a noun, plural, heptarchies, often initial cap letters. The 7 principal concurrent Anglo-Saxon kingdoms supposed to have existed in the 7th.
Supposed,
supposed to have existed in the 7th and 8th centuries. Government by 7 persons, an allied group of 7 states or kingdom, each under its own ruler.
And now what you have, so now when you look at the Picts and the Moors and the Dubs, you have to put it in perspective, because when people are looking at Iberia now, in these days, and Phoenicia, which are now known as Europe, their mind is always usually projected to the heterogeneous hybrid or the hybrid Europeans because of the operations in these last few hundred years. So when they're looking at Iberia, their mind doesn't immediately run to Africa, although they're dealing with Africa still. You see the problem? This is why, again, and for those of you who already know, because I know most of you who come here, we're telling you stuff you already know, truthfully. What we're trying to do is kind of bring some harmony among us all, so that the people that are reawakening on the planet can burn less energy on useless games, useless organizational structures, or structures that are designed to more or less kill their time, or what you call stagnate them, or put them on a mental treadmill so that they can be sacrificed later, because they're going to have to go to their divine mind in order to solve problems. Belief systems, as we have been taught, never did work for humanity. However, they were a source of social solace by design to comfort a body of people who have been devoured, or would you say defeated. And so the dogma systems of the social solace systems, this is where the origin of them being promoted as religion from a sociological point of view, that's how that evolved. But nevertheless, it has become an artificial reality among our people, and that artificial reality must be dissolved in order for our people to start dealing with the true sciences of nature, so that we can start fixing society here at Midgard. And so, we're really having a purging that must take place. And again, while we're having this casual discussion about the lordship of the executors, lordship of maintaining hell on at Midgard, because that's essentially what they've been doing, and we need to kind of have a less emotional conversation about it, a less emotional view, and a more metaphysical, scientific, and actual political, geopolitical uh, analysis of what's really going on, so that we can start constructing solutions and begin to trust ourselves that among us, there are capable ones. However, and I know that you all are thinking some of these things, our difficulties have been, as the people are reawakening, finding honorable men and women who are not just competent in their Gnostic basis, but in their sincere honor and integrity on actually helping to clean up Midgard, because it's a job for everyone, you know, because every man, every woman, and every child must confess their own in this Aquarian light, and that's just simply the truth. And I think because the people have been geared or groomed into this sacrificial lamb type mentality, they're still looking for, this sacrificial Jesus image or Serapis image that they can sacrifice, on an altar to cover up for the sin of ignorance type stuff. And the deal of his nature is not allowing that, and you must be aware of that.
There's a brother here, Eritrean here in the House of Reawakening, and I can't call his name because everything there looks like it's written in hieroglyph, but just to acknowledge, because you talk a lot about Eritrea, and Saba and so forth. So we recognize you, brother. Just can't say your appellation with that. But let me just say if there's anything else. Is there any questions? If you have questions that that are relevant that you want to, no personal questions, like help me out with this problem questions, but general questions that you would like to ask Grand Sheik, if you mind. I'm trying to scroll through the comments to see if there are any specific questions that need to be answered that are not personal in nature, but more of a general nature.
The other thing too, Dr. Anaya, if we could get the people just beginning, and they're doing it truthfully because they really are, to start thinking again. Yeah. The solutions are in them. But people have been trained for so many generations by the priesthood not to believe in themselves, not to trust themselves, and to keep looking for so we're creatures of habit, and they're depending on people maintaining the habits that they've been trained in for generations to keep looking